Oh, one last time for the one last time as we get it done. The final conversation before Sunday's free agency and the NBA begins, 6 p.m. And by the way, we'll be here for you on Sunday as things get underway. Welcome to the PHLY Sixers podcast on a Friday with Derek Bodner, Kyle Neubeck. I'm Devon Givens, Brianna here producing all of you. We see you there in the chat. We have a lot to discuss, some more things out there of names, again, being attached to the Philadelphia 76ers, but it's just more of, hey, what are we thinking? What are we seeing? What are we reading? What are we hearing? All of that conversation we'll bring to you here on this Friday as we get ready for the all too important offseason for Daryl Morey, Elton Brand, and the front office to finally start to put this team together. Now, 2 more players, at least drafted, not under contract, and Jared McCain and Adem. I was saying Adam yesterday, so
actually,
fix it.
I learned in doing some research about Adem Bona.
Yes,
that was not his given name at birth, and actually, when he moved from Nigeria to Turkey to pursue basketball, he actually changed his name there, and Adem is actually inspired by Adam, the first man in the Bible. So it went down a bit of a wormhole on him. So yeah, I think calling him Adam is it's wrong, but he is taking inspiration from that.
So we'll talk about those guys a little bit later because we did have a chance to hear and see those guys speak today for the first time at the Sixers practice facility for their introductory press conferences. So we'll talk about them a little bit later. And as someone said there, it was Korean chicken. Thank you, Korean chicken. PHLY guys dressed fresh today. So
had to go to the see some people at the practice facility, right?
Yeah, we can't go.
And us dressing up is just putting in marginally more effort.
By the way, Devon, I think you could have fit in on the stage with Jared and Adem because they were wearing white shirts,
cream-looking shirts.
Yeah, exactly. You would have been right at home there.
Yeah, they should have put me up there. PR, Sixers, put me up there next time so I can be a little buffer. But no, the guys were good. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But we have to start off with some of the things that are still circulating about what's going on right now in the NBA as free agency is getting ready to get underway. We did have a trade a little bit earlier. The Sixers were not involved in that. Tim Hardaway Jr. and a couple of second-round picks going to Detroit for Quentin Grimes. He goes to the Dallas Mavericks if he stays put. That's actually a pretty good pickup for them for some more defensive purposes, and he can shoot the ball, put the ball on the floor a little bit. Played at Houston in college after leaving Kansas. But that's just another move that has happened in the NBA that Sixers have not done anything as we start to focus on what is going on with them now. And today, Derek, as we start off, we heard a new rumor about Klay Thompson, but we'll start off with the Paul George stuff as usual with him because we're getting closer. Do you feel with some of the things that we're still hearing, not pushing him away from the Philadelphia 76ers, but still talking about it might be a little bit tough. He might be looking elsewhere. Clippers still in the play. Golden State Warriors a possibility. Houston's trying to trade for everybody if you read everything that's out there. But for the Paul George side of things, as we sit here on the Friday, he's still, at one point, you put a percentage on it of how, it might be pretty good, 30, 40, 35%, somewhere around there. But things started to wane a bit. But now that we are here on Friday and they have not been removed from the conversations with Paul George, it's still in play, it looks like.
Yeah, and to your point, I think like a week ago, I sat here and said, all right, well, maybe at one point the Sixers felt like it was 35-40. Maybe they now feel like it's 10, and that's leading to some of this discourse. But it doesn't mean it's 0, and it doesn't mean it can't be bumped back up. And am I saying it's bumped back up? No, not necessarily. It could be. If he opts...
Hear that, aggregators?
Yes, please. If he opts out of the contract, then it could very significantly be bumped up. At that point, it becomes a lot more likely he goes to either back to the Clippers or a team with space. That would help the Sixers, of course. But I think the key right now is they just don't feel compelled to act on anything else until that situation gets resolved. I think the chance of it, whether it's 10%, which I maybe speculated might have dropped down to a week ago. Maybe it's crept back up to 20, 25%, 30%. Who knows exactly where they're ballparking it. The key is it is high enough where they don't feel compelled to act. And part of that is because I think if you were to speculate about what a plan B or backup option would be, and again, aggregators speculating, it doesn't seem like there's any movement on some kind of a Brandon Ingram trade. All the other players out there have either committed to going back or they haven't moved. So there's no reason to act before Paul George's decision on the opt-in. That deadline is the 29th, tomorrow, so we will know pretty quickly, and then we can see what the next steps were. But I do think there's some reason for optimism. Like I said, I don't know if that means 15, 20%. I don't know if that means you're getting back to the 35, 40%, but there's enough to not act right now.
Do we want to shout out your guy Tiramisu, Devon,
Yes.
right now? The
I
Merce
saw that.
and me.
I saw that.
The nice $30 super chat saying, appreciate you guys feeding into my 76er addiction throughout this free agency and draft process.
And we hope to see you on Sunday as well. As we
will be here.
We will
Sunday
be here
evening.
with you. Rich will also be with us too as we have a big show on Sunday.
So building on Derek's point here, I said many times leading into the draft that you would get at least a slight lean or indication of where they or how they felt about the Paul George situation based on what they did. That I thought if they were going to make a sizable trade, I would have expected either for that to happen on draft night or for some form of a trade back, accumulate more assets, do something other than sit there and pick. And so do I think there's a gigantic percentage chance that Paul George is coming here? No. I still, in my heart of hearts, think he's finding it hard to walk away from LA. If he was convinced he was leaving LA, we would probably know by now. I think the fact that everything is still up in the air is why the Sixers have remained relatively static over the the last few days, last week, week and a half, however you want to characterize it, because the whole league to some degree is waiting on this Paul George decision. He is the big domino in free agency. And regardless of what he decides, whether he decides to opt in and try to force a trade, whether he opts out, stays with LA, whether he opts out and goes to Philadelphia, I do think if you're looking at it from the Sixers perspective, they almost certainly want him to opt out because that I think then it basically comes down to it's a 2-horse race. I don't believe Orlando is a real threat to sign Paul George where we sit today. I think if he opts out, it's either he's returning to LA on a deal that they agree to or the Sixers are signing them to a max and he's coming here. Once he opts in, that opens the door for Golden State's been thrown out there a lot. There's a lot of interest there, and I think that would probably suit him as a team that's got a chance to compete, team that's got the ability to go get him, and his skill set fits along with what they have there, what they've built there. Not as fearful as of Houston, because the word on the street right now is that I think they're aiming younger. Like they want somebody that potentially makes them better, but is also kind of growing alongside the likes of Şengün, Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, whoever ends up still there after they would make a big trade. And so they have a good shot at this guy who right now is the big fish that we know is available on the market. And I will tell you this, I do think the Sixers feel good about where they're at right now. That doesn't mean they think they're getting Paul George specifically. But typically 2 days before free agency, if there's been this whole build-up period, right? They're going to have all this flexibility. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. If they believed this was all about to go up in smoke and they didn't feel good about their options, you'd start hearing a lot of spin. You'd start hearing, hey, we're focusing on this and that, and you'd hear that coming out of Sixers channel. I have not heard that over the last 24 to 48 hours. So we'll have to wait and see. Talk is cheap. We don't know what's going to happen, but that Paul George ball is still in the air right now. And until that is resolved, things are going to be kind of just, we're all going to be waiting here.
And again, I hesitate to almost even talk about it like that because I think some people read that and be like, oh, well, they're hinting Paul George is coming. I don't know what the exact percentage is. I just have a gut feeling that it's high enough that they don't feel compelled to act now.
One thing I remember, Kyle, you saying when you started talking about this, both you and Derek, a while ago, that if in fact he does become available outside of the deal, is that this might take some time. It's not going to happen very quickly. And of course, with him not making a decision yet on whether he's going to opt in or opt out, that it's going to take some time. Now, when we get to Sunday, and if it's not done, Then what do the Sixers do? How do they approach? How do they pivot if they have to pivot quickly? Do they have enough information to make them think about, hey, we need to jump on something else quickly here, because if this guy's going to take that long, it's going to drag out, and we're going to start to lose some players that start to sign very fast, because as we know, no one wants to lose money when they have an opportunity to sign those contracts at 601, 602. And when you get to 610, that there's so many people off the board, and you're sitting there looking around the room, and then there's that. And that's exactly what it is. But if it does take some time, you feel like, hey, these guys are going to have a game plan. If the Paul George thing happens very quickly, they'll pivot quickly and go to the next thing that they feel is best for their team.
Yeah. And like, to your point, Devon, so somebody like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, for example, he's someone that has a market, can make a good amount of money. But if the Paul George situation plays out over a week or so, KCP is not going to just sit there and say, well, maybe I'll get money from somebody. He's going to most likely lock in the best deal he can get in the first 72 hours of free agency. That's just how this works. Anymore, in the first hour of free agency, most of the big decisions are made, and everybody else comes after that. So those top of market or close to top of market guys, they just come off the board fast and furious. And then, look, you might be able to find a mid-level guy a little bit later. But generally, agents and players are pushing for, this is when the space is there. I'm going to do my absolute best in this initial flurry to get my guy situated with the money, the years, and the situation that they feel works best for them. There's not a lot of time to be patient. So you guys on the other side of this camera who are watching the show, who have been with us all week, you're going to have a resolution in some form pretty soon. I would say that.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it'll be real interesting if he ends up opting out, because that, in a weird way, almost feels like the most uncertain, because Paul George. I think KCP, it makes sense for him to act quickly because there's only so many teams with cap space, and it doesn't seem like he's going back. Paul George, I think, is pretty confident that at the worst case scenario, you can go back to the Clippers for a 3-year deal. Like, there's some at risk, but I think he is maybe
$150 million being your floor is kind of,
so I worry.
It's not a bad.
That's a pretty good life raft to float out on.
I worry a little bit that he might be more patient than maybe some of the other options the Sixers could pivot to, but we'll see.
Yeah, so it should be an interesting one with the Paul George thing, because you see it, Golden State, the Clippers, of course, Philadelphia. Does Orlando get back into the mix? Houston, you're starting to see Zion Williamson's name. We've seen Kevin Durant. I'm not buying any of that stuff. And when it comes to all those names that they're just throwing out there, Devin Booker, they're just throwing names against the wall, see if something sticks, to find out if anybody is willing to come to Houston or trade for that player, of course, specifically, because all of those players are under contract. So with this case, though, with Paul George, I always found it funny with them, because when they signed Kawhi Leonard, what was that, January, February, to that extension, 3 years, close to $150 million. It's like, all right, well, we know what's next. We know what's going to happen. And it didn't. And it just kept dragging on. And then when Kyle and Derek reported what they reported, with the things that they were hearing all the way back then, that's when it really started to get interesting. And then we're now 6 months later, 5 months later, and we're like, okay, this is really on the doorstep of still possibly happen, even with all the things not necessarily going his way, of not getting the extension with Los Angeles, staying exactly where he may want to be, where he now may be forced to do something else. And then when you hear the Knicks and their potential interest, they trade for Mikal Bridges, then re-sign OG Anunoby. You would think he's now at the table in that spot also. So it's, as Derek started off with, Kyle added on, it's still looking decently enough for them to be in the mix. Nothing changes except for he has less places to go to with the New York Knicks part off. If things are not working out for him in LA, he feels like he's being disrespected in that way, that Philadelphia might be the landing spot for him with a full max contract. And we'll have an opportunity to talk about it again on Sunday, getting into it all. We do have to talk about another player in Klay Thompson. We'll discuss that with him, about him when we get back. But I want to tell you about our good friends from Manscaped. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to announce that smooth sack summer is officially upon us.
Go.
Here we go, baby. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you groom the pubes to bum. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped, you can make this season your smoothest yet. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs cool in the summer while looking hot. Join the 10 million worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use code PHLY. Summertime and the trimming is easy as it is warm now outside. We're officially into summer. The Manscaped Performance Package 5.0 has everything you need to prepare that summer bod. You still have time to get things together, so while you're lifting the weights, you're doing your push-ups, all that, you make sure you groom properly as well. Inside the packaging, you have everything for the 5.0 Ultra. You'll find the star of the show, and that is the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, which we also own here on this set. Their 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little bit off the top, the new foil blade to go smoother wherever your heart desires. We also have a few more things to share with you with the Performance Package 5.0. That's the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PHLY at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PHLY at manscaped.com. You know what it is. It's smooth sack summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind.
I'm sorry. Now that Sublime song is going to be corrupted in my mind forever. Now I'm going to hear summertime and the trimming's easy.
I do sort of wish that we had like a deal with Manscaped where like Devon had to tweet out smooth sack summer like a specific number of times, because that would be
with
just
the
hilarious.
hashtag and everything.
Yes.
Listen,
I'll do it.
I have a little more family-friendly ad read from our friends.
Sorry, Mom.
That's Shady Rays, baby. When you got that smooth sack and you're hitting the beach, you also got to protect your eyes,
There
right?
you go.
Right,
Combine,
ladies and gentlemen.
Combine, baby.
Smooth sack summer and Shady Rays summer. Guys, get ready for the season ahead with quality shades that are built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that will not break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Durable frames, crystal clear optics. They're the perfect choice for all your outdoor adventures. Hundreds of options to choose from. You guys have seen mine on the show. You've seen Derek and Devon put on some stylish sunglasses.
Mine are in the car right
of
now.
their own.
Right now.
I've been on
Sunny
a little bit of a summer tour. I've had some time on the weekends to go down to the Jersey Shore. I've seen friends down in Baltimore, Maryland, down in the Virginia area. I was out on a boat last weekend.
Look at you.
Catching some crabs, pulling up the crab traps out of the muck and eating some fresh seafood.
Don't be like Kramer, though, getting arrested for that stuff.
All our crabs are street
You're
legal,
good.
I promise.
You're good.
The point is, I needed those sunglasses. Once you're out on the water, that glare, the reflection coming off the water is really bad, and my Shady Rays kept my eyes protected so I could use that hook, scoop the crab traps up, get some fresh seafood. On the weekend, you guys can use your Shady Rays just about anywhere. And if those shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, you do not have to sweat it. Shady Rays has the most insane protection in all of eyewear, every pair backed by lost or broken replacements. So exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out the best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com. Use the code PHLY for 35% off of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people.
And we want to make sure we let you know that our show today is brought to you by our good friends from Rothman Orthopedics. As we get ready to talk about Klay Thompson, he had some big injuries over the last couple of seasons. Yes. If he was here, I would have said, hey, go to Rothman Orthopedics and get all that ACL, Achilles stuff taken care of here in Philadelphia, because they are absolutely the best. They took care of me, made sure I was good to go. I was talking to the Sixers folks when we were at the facility today, and I'll be able to get back out there on the floor and play some competitive basketball a little bit next month. So we appreciate Rothman Orthopedics for that, and we appreciate them for sponsoring our shows all week, and that will be the case once again on Sunday as we get ready for free agency. Speaking of Klay Thompson, report out there from The Athletic today, yes, Kyle, that there are there's some interest from the Sixers the way of Klay Thompson as a potential free agent target. And he is one that we've talked about him in the past. Maybe Orlando might be a good spot for him because of the shooting with that young team. And, of course, the Sixers do need shooting, but we've also talked about that it may not be the very best fit here just because the guy can't move anymore. But the report
It is a downside. Yep.
There is a downside. The shooting, though, would be welcomed here. But what is the
I don't necessarily want to do the Jay-Z grand opening, grand closing here, but I'll set up Sam Amick at The Athletic, very reliable, plugged-in reporter at the National. The good Sam.
Look at that.
Reliable guy at the national level. He said this morning,
West Coast,
good chance that Klay is leaving. Also said, quote, a league source said Philadelphia has interest in Thompson. I will tell you what I have heard. So for frame of reference, we've talked about Levine on the show, right? Mm-hmm. And I've been pretty forceful about they don't want him. I don't think it's that strong coming out of the Sixers. What I've heard around the league, I don't think the Sixers are going to be that strong in the market for Klay Thompson. So I would say if you're weighing, let's say, whether it's a trade for Brandon Ingram or they're looking elsewhere and they have more money than they'd have to work with than if they signed Paul George. My guess is they would have stronger interest in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, that he would be a bigger priority in that situation. Mm-hmm. Klay Thompson, while I think he has value at the right dollar amount and in the right situation, and certainly offensively would come here and get an avalanche of open threes, catch and shoot looks. He's not the same movement shooter that he was previously. Like, there is certainly utility to him. I think based on what he wants, which is a good chunk of money, I don't think the Sixers, if I had to guess, would be as willing to go up to the number he wants. And so then that's when the conversation becomes like, your priorities just go elsewhere. So it's not that I think they're 100% out on him, but I don't think they're in the mix to the degree it's been suggested so far. So keep a closer eye on Caldwell-Pope than Klay Thompson is what I would say.
We were talking about the tiers, the letters of where they were. We're past E, F, and G when it comes to Klay Thompson.
Yeah. No, and look, if you look at just Klay Thompson and the numbers, you're like, he's still shooting 38, 39% from three on good volume, average, like 18 per game last year. We'll ignore that 0 for 10 at the end of the season with, but the offensive productivity is still all right. You can fit a roll, put him in the corner, what have you. He will shoot more than Buddy Hield. It's all true. He's a traffic cone on defense. Like, he just does not move well at all on the perimeter. It would be painful to watch unless you fall to the point where you're really looking for, like, hey, we want to give a guy a balloon payment. And maybe he'll make an open shot just to, hold down the fort a little bit, maybe. But like, you've run through a lot of your options. I just don't see it.
So Hypothetical Man says in the chat, though, Danny Green retired so Klay Thompson could send it from 3 for our Sixers. So when you look at that, Danny Green, he was still a decent team defender when he arrived. But the shooting, similar reason why he was brought here, why he was traded from OKC at that time. So when you look at those two guys, is there a comp there, as Hypothetical Man points out?
If we're talking about Klay on a Danny Green-esque contract, I'll get behind that. But someone's going to give Klay 20 to 25 per, I think. I don't want to be in that business.
No, that's way too much.
Yeah.
And look, here's the confusing thing for me with Klay is that I don't think his market is that wide, especially at the number he wants. And again, I know Orlando continues to be attached to him as well. I don't really get it for them. I get they need shooting. They need guys who can dribble too. Like, that whole team is just guys who are like, they are in need of a real guard playmaker who can take people off the bounce and set up, Franz and make it so Paolo doesn't have to work out of the mid post and isolate to get all his buckets. Like, they need someone who's going to make their lives easier. And I get it. Look, Paolo was a number 1 overall pick, so you're going to run a lot of the offense through him.
Right.
He shouldn't have to be the guy who does everything, though. Like, you do want, it's the same reason you want someone as a table setter to play with Joel Embiid. Yes, you're going to throw him the ball at the elbows, in the post, and you're going to ask him to beat guys one-on-one or draw double teams. But the second James Harden came here, there were all the questions like, oh, Joel Embiid's not a real pick and roll guy. Well, guess what? That combination worked pretty well. And playing the two-man game with Tyrese Maxey has worked pretty well. And if you can put him next to a ball handler, that's always better. So I don't really get the Klay Orlando thing. I get the shooting is valuable. I just feel like they need something different than that. They can't just have a bunch of guys who stand and shoot or are going to be mid-post ISO type guys. Like I just don't see the path there. Now maybe they have something cooking that I'm not aware of, but I like Orlando. I like the young guys that they have. I just feel like where they've been, the players they've been attached to this offseason.
Outside of the Paul George one. That one.
Yeah, but even him, like I'm skeptical of the reason I like him here is because they need more than anything. They need high volume catch and shoot type stuff. And they need a real wing who can defend real wings. Orlando is not at a shortage of guys who can defend on the perimeter and switch across matchups. They do need the shooting, but I don't think it's the only thing. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they just turn into this team that's full of 6'8" guys and they switch everything, and that's good enough.
Tristan da Silva. But when it comes to the Klay Thompson piece in Orlando, I agree with you on that. Where Klay Thompson, when he was great, especially when he dropped 61 3/4 the one time, and they talked about how many dribbles he took. They keep stats of how many dribbles he takes because he doesn't dribble. And that's how great he is. He catches, he shoots. Sometimes he'll put the ball on the floor when he has a pathway to get downhill, finish at the rim, maybe a dribble, sidestep, pull up as the defender flies by. But he does not put the basketball on the floor. Yeah. So when you talk about playmaking there, I mean, isn't that basically Gary Harris now? And you're just basically replacing the contracts in the jersey at that point, because Gary Harris basically did the same. Now the defense is different with Gary Harris, even at this stage of their careers. But that's basically the same thing. They do need someone that's going to be able to put the ball on the floor. So it really doesn't make all that much sense unless they just want some more vets in there, like they gave that balloon payment to Joe Ingles last summer for 2 years. What was it, like $10 million or something like that, that they did that. Maybe that's another part of it to go with the shooting as the table setting, as you point out with Franz and Paolo, that they need somebody to knock down shots on the outside to go along with it.
Yeah, they could. And I mean, look, they're the potential foil for pretty much every person we talk about here with the Sixers. So it will be interesting what they do. But I agree with you. They could certainly use that kind of shooting, but they also need someone to put the ball on the floor and create. So I think that's a fair point.
Corey says in the super chat, can we try to use the word, quote unquote, debate today, please? Cannot use the word debate, please. Nobody wants that. Can we talk about the KCP buzz, though, off of the Klay Thompson piece?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think KCP, like when we did our mock offseason last week, I did not go the KCP route, but I think KCP would be a really good option. Like when you talk about a guy who can just knock down shots, has done so very consistently. Like he's been 39-40% for pretty much the last 4 or 5 years. Now he's played with LeBron and Jokic, so that it helps. It helps. But I mean, Embiid's going to attract a lot of attention, so that's going to help too. And just that kind of two-way competence, that would be a real great piece. A real great piece. Player who doesn't take something drastically off the table on either end of the floor. I do worry a little bit. You know, he's 31 going on 32. I worry if you have to give him a 4-year deal, how does that look when he's 33, 34, 35? But, I mean, two things. First of all, he'd be really helpful over the next 2 years, possibly over the course of that contract. And quite frankly, 2028's problem can be something you worry about in 2028.
I give him a lot of credit, too, from when he was in Detroit when he first got to the league. He looked like he was going to be a big part of their franchise in Detroit, get that big money. I remember talking one offseason when he was a free agent, and I think it was Brian Colangelo. Yeah, it was Brian Colangelo was still here, and we were talking one day, and we were speaking about him getting like a 4 for $80 kind of contract, because that's the number that was going around as that big number coming off the rookie deal. Then things didn't work out. Also got into some trouble off the floor, where that was unfortunate for him. But he has really established himself as from the Los Angeles, winning a championship there, playing well off of the Stars, now making the right decision to go to Denver and sign that contract. foreseeing what was going on there, maybe with Jokic and making it easier on himself to play and fit in around them, the Aaron Gordon part and Jamal Murray, to now one of the more sought-out players to be targeted this offseason and get decent money as a role player.
Yeah.
Big change for who he was as a player, what he was supposed to be as a player at least.
Yeah. And like early in his career, he was pretty heavy. Just he gets buckets in transition, but you're still waiting for the 3 part to come around on a consistent basis. So, I mean, he's turned himself into a pretty reliable shooter.
And coming out of Georgia, that was a thing that looked like it was going to translate pretty well. Yeah.
So it was just a little bit of ups and downs in the early days. But yeah, I mean, look, when it is easier to play off of the LeBrons and the Jokic's of the world that are these great playmakers, and your creation burden is not as high. But not every guy. I always admire the guys who are not getting lots of touches or have to be just those standstill, catch and shoot, relocation type shooters, and then go on the other end of the floor and play your ass off on defense. And, you know, he's slipped a little bit physically where he's not quite as good defensively right now and moving forward, but he's still a very good 2-position, like 2s and 3s type defender, and is a guy away from the ball, away from the play, who is attentive, makes the smart rotations, and has generally been part of teams that even when they're in suboptimal lineups, the punch above their weight, and he's a big part of that. And that's why it's part of, look, McCain does not have his physical tools, right? But it's part of why I said on yesterday's show that I'm higher on McCain than maybe I was initially thinking about the defense, just because I want guys and I care about guys that play connected, that are smart, and that are constantly in the right places. And KCP fits that bill on top of being, a good on-ball option against a lot of 2s and 3s in the NBA.
And by the way, he played, with Jokic and LeBron. He also had a year where he played on a pretty shit Washington team, and he still made like 39% of his threes on high volume. So this track record, I think, is strong enough where we don't worry too much about leaving great situations because he's going to make shots.
Well, he's going if he were to sign here in Philadelphia, he's also going to be playing with another great player in Joel Embiid. And I wanted to look at Danny Green's stats, not for the Klay Thompson part, but for what you just said, Kyle, about being a role player and getting enough shots. And I'm looking at Danny Green's first year here when he played 69 games, and he shot 41% from the floor, averaged 9.5 points from points per game, but he got off 6.3 threes in that first year here with the Sixers playing with Joel Embiid, and he shot it at a 40% clip. So to your point, maybe that is enough shots for him, and he is more willing to I'm more willing to watch it too. Putting the ball on the floor versus Danny Green putting the ball on the floor with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and finishing in transition, not just finding a spot in a fast break opportunity around the arc to spot up for a three-pointer. But no, you fill the lane, that guy can still run and finish at the rim, layup, dunk, backdoor cutting, things of that nature, where that number here, 7.9, 8 shots a game, that might be about 10 or 11 for him because of the ability to finish also in transition, the ability to cut baseline, middle of the floor, and find opening spots. Double team for Joel Embiid. If he's playing off of Nikola Jokic as a player like that, different type of passer, but the attention is the same. Yeah. And he knows how to play off of that type of player to get some good looks and to find those open spots within the defense.
Yeah. Shame of it is if they do get, I don't want to say shame of it because you'd end up with Paul George in the scenario, but with Paul George, there's no pathway to getting KCP.
No.
This is like a Brandon Ingram or other options aggregators path where it would come to.
Yeah, like a Markkanen if somehow
if
available.
Markkanen becomes available, you have a lot of cap space to work with because his cap hit is real low.
Well, you know who's going to be here with us no matter what, gentlemen?
Who's that?
Our great friends at Olipop. Olipop is a new kind of soda with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar, 9 grams of fiber per can. Olipop's available online in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including the most recent launch at all Wawa stores. You can scoop a classic root beer or strawberry vanilla at a Wawa near you. Guys, this is a week that historically my diet is not great. We're working late nights, working long hours, trying to be ready for the show. Be ready for all the different possibilities. And sometimes you're like, man, I want caffeine. I want some sugar. I want some soda. And I got to fight back against that beast. But I always, regardless, need some tasty drinks to get me through these. Look, I'm sitting at my desk. I'm hanging out with these guys in the office. Wherever I am, I need a good tasting beverage. And I need one that is not killing my health as I need to work these long hours, lose sleep, do everything else. Olipop allows the best of all worlds. It's much lower in sugar than conventional sodas with only 2 to 5 grams of sugar coming from natural sources. None of it's added. Just 2 grams of sugar in a vintage cola Olipop compared to a regular Coca-Cola, which has 39 grams of sugar. And by the way, still tastes great. And you got plenty of variety. A lot of classic type of flavors. Vintage cola, classic root beer, orange squeeze, classic grape, strawberry vanilla, cream soda, cherry cola. We love the grape around here. I also love the watermelon lime. It's good on its own. It's good as a mixer. Whatever your fancy is, you can get it through Olipop. So use the code PHLY20 for 20% off your next Olipop order. A discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscriptions. Olipop is sold online at drinkolipop.com and on Amazon. It's available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and Go Puff.
Also, want to make sure we tell you about Rite Aid, specifically Rite Aid and their pharmacy services. With a MyPharmacy account at Rite Aid, you can refill your prescriptions, schedule a vaccine, get personalized care recommendations, sign up for prescription notifications. All you need to get started is a prescription at Rite Aid. Stop stressing about your prescriptions. Let Rite Aid refill them automatically. You can enroll in automated courtesy refills. It's free, easy, and most prescriptions qualify. Talk with your Rite Aid pharmacist or sign up through your MyPharmacy account at riteaid.com. And if you need to make updates to your prescriptions, you can use a Rite Aid mobile app to manage them. With the Rite Aid mobile app, you can transfer or refill your prescriptions, set up medication reminders, enroll in prescription notifications, download the app from the Apple App Store or from Google Play. Transfer your prescriptions to Rite Aid today. Just go to riteaid.com/transfer. Rite Aid caring pharmacists are ready to answer your questions and help you stay healthy. Get your prescriptions along with anything at Rite Aid you may need, including over-the-counter medicines, household products, cosmetics, and more. Just ask your pharmacy team for details. Restrictions apply.
Super chat from Devon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats. Grape, strawberry, vanilla, Olipop, chef's kiss.
Grape is definitely up there.
Yeah,
I think it's the consensus favorite at the PHLY offices.
Send us more grape.
By the way, we have a couple of big super chats.
We do.
Yes, we do.
Our friend
He's
Michael
really
B.
tried hard to get us over to Portugal.
Big super chats from Michael B. And I am blocked from the camera, so I'm not sure that I can. Our camera's blocking.
I got
the screen
you covered
a little bit, so we might have to.
Got you covered on that. One is, let's go to the first one. After what happened yesterday, the super chat is just to say we all love and appreciate all of you. Oh, and Kyle, I won the district basketball championship from your high school alma mater in 1988.
I did see that part earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell if he said so. In 1988, my high school that I went to won the District 1 3A championship.
Okay.
So I'm trying to figure out. They weren't in the championship game in 87 or 89. I don't know Michael, I don't know what's going on with your memory there. Maybe you are a HH guy and you were on that team, but I'm not sure. Maybe we're going to have to work on we'll talk off the show or something. I don't want to dox anybody where you went to school, but the 1988 3A District 1 championship was won 56-49 by Happer Horsham over Pottstown High School.
Okay.
Pottstown did win in 89, but they played Holy Ghost Prep. So I don't know, Michael. I don't know what's going on there. But we appreciate the sentiment. And I know there were some people asking what happened yesterday. We'll just leave it at this. Something out of pocket was said to Devon, and we don't take disrespect on any level, but certainly not at the level it went to yesterday when it comes to whether it's Devon, Derek, Brianna. I don't take kindly to any of that. So there's a big difference between some of the trash talk that's said in the chat and what was said yesterday.
And for anyone who didn't see it, first of all, we're not going to go completely over it, but you don't have to worry about being banned from the chat. We're not just going to ban you if you get a little punchy or anything like that.
Yes.
That was a clear line that was crossed. As long as you're a good person, you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So we appreciate it. We love you too, Mike. He has one more super chat, another 50 spot for us.
Michael said he was 7 for 9 in the final versus Pottstown.
He remembers.
So
Okay.
Go Hats.
He remembers. And to the fam, everyone stick together and enjoy this. You guys are already a family. And I'd say yesterday we were reminded that matters. Love and respect to all of you. Love and respect to you, Mike. Hopefully we're out there doing the show with you. You'll be our fourth host on the show if we're coming out there for sure. If we're hanging out in Portugal.
Curious how you ended up over there now.
We
need the full story.
Listen, he went from my hometown.
I mean, winning championships
to
Yep.
But yeah, so the example I used yesterday, it's like somebody like Real Time comes in here. He's checking in, by the way, from Aruba today. He said he's on vacation and said, I got to feed the Sixers beast. Said that early in the show. Real Time will have some fun at ARC. He's called my yellow polo my Charlie Brown shirt. He's joking about Derek. And like, that's all within bounds. I'm certainly not. I will punch back at you guys. But when you cross certain lines, we will not tolerate it.
And Quill said, we just say the word and he'll pull up. I know, Quill. We know. We know. And that's the community. That's the family that Mike is talking about. He also says it's correct that the only reason it is because Hatboro went from triple A to 4A.
Quad A.
Yeah. So that's what he said there.
Fun fact, I was part of, at the time, the biggest high school class we ever had. And then my sister's class immediately passed it like 2 years later. So.
It's usually how population goes.
Yeah. But it was like for a long time, it was pretty static. But we were a few hundred more than the closest one. So I don't know what happened there. It was a gold rush of real estate in Happer Horsham, I guess.
Bree, can we throw the other super chats up there? I think we had a few more left. We did. Devon says here, all right, man, this team is emotional.
Emotional roller coaster. Love you guys,
Love you guys, no doubt. Devon, yeah, man. And look, hold on. Just hang tight until we get to Sunday to see exactly what happens. Don't spill your bucket.
We're on the roller coaster with you, brother.
Don't spill your bucket just yet because you're going to have to react again on Sunday. So hang in there. We'll see what happens. 6:01 on Sunday. And we'll be here with you. I wanted to check the showtime to make sure we had it correct on Sunday and just to make sure we had the right time. Because
I believe it is 5 p.m.
It is 5
on Sunday.
I just wanted to make sure.
We will be here an hour before free agency starts, so it's a pre-agency.
To set the
as
table.
we're hearing the rumors on Sunday, and then right as it opens, 6 o'clock, bell sounds, off to the races.
Did you call that a pre-agency?
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
That's
As a
pretty
resident dad joke person, I appreciate
That's
that.
pretty good. What is that? EMDM says, can the Sixers get Klay and Paul George, or maybe Klay and Ingram?
The latter would definitely, I shouldn't say definitely. It sort of depends on the reasonable ask from Klay.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any world where you're getting PG and Klay based on what the word is that Klay is trying to get in free agency. Because if Klay was going to take a big pay cut, he's just probably staying in Golden State.
And after let's say PG, after that 49.50, you're talking about 12 to 13 million left. He's not taking that.
No.
If he did, I wouldn't have as many objections to it because that would be a fine contract. And
you could get a mid-level type deal for Klay. Yeah, I would sign up for that. At the mid-level, you're just hoping for a guy who's like a viable playoff rotation player, right? So,
Matt says in the super chat, Tim Bontemps, friend of the show, framed this correctly on
Timmy
today's
Goodtimes
pod.
or Timmy Straw Polls, depending on the day.
Nothing has changed for the Sixers, just around them. Build the roster and depth around Joel and Tyrese. Derek?
I agree that nothing has really changed. I don't necessarily I think you need a pretty good third piece here. But I do think that some of the reaction is, look, I think McHale being traded was unexpected. I think because of that, he has been a dream target that a lot of people had. So because the Sixers weren't involved in it and someone who you weren't expecting to move was moved, there was a lot of panic. And I get it. The team that just knocked you out of the playoffs just got significantly better. But most of the people that we were talking about, that wasn't really who we were focused on. And OG, the report that he will go back, that's not great. But we always thought he was going to be an outside possibility either. If Paul George, the odds have actually shifted back, that is pretty significant. We will see whether or not that is truly the case, largely depending on whether or not he opts in or not. But look, I think this was always going to get uncomfortable. So I think a lot of what we saw over the last couple of days was just people realizing this is not going to be clean, that this isn't going to be without a lot of heart wrenching. But I don't think a whole lot has really changed. I agree.
It would have been
sentiment.
nice on, like June 15th to just get the Woj. Paul George is planning to sign with the Philadelphia 76ers.
Well, which would be a little bit of tampering there.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a whole different discussion. Nobody tampers in the NBA, especially not the Sixers. And
no, they're way too worried about second-round picks to tamper. They'd never do that.
They never do that and shorten the second round of the draft like they did last night, where there were only 58 picks overall.
I mean,
nobody would do that.
We've all been through this before, maybe not with the Sixers, but every team that is chasing an actual star, a high-end guy, as far as the public knows, nobody really knows until 6 o'clock, opening a free agency. That's when the rubber meets the road.
And to Kyle brought this up before the show. Like, you're dealing with one of the most wishy-washy stars in the NBA, and that's going to make this whole thing a little bit more, a little tougher.
That's why I could drag out, because the guy just simply it really seems like he does not know what he wants to do since he did not get what he wanted.
Well, we talked about it the other day off the show.
It does seem pretty clear what he wants is a 4-year deal. For
I'm not saying. I'm saying, he's not getting what he wants.
No, but I mean, I think we all agree that that's still like his probably top priority.
For Paul George, he is basically faced with the same problem the Sixers are dealing with on a team level, right? Like, you would love to have the best option or your preferred option in front of you, which for him would be staying in LA, being close to home, and getting the full max from the Clippers. You finish out your career where you're from in a place that you like on a team that you actively wanted to go to. That doesn't appear to be on the table. And so your options are a series of, what am I willing to give up type of decisions. Do I give up the money in years? Then you probably stay in LA. Mm-hmm. Do I want the money in years more than anything? I'm going to Philadelphia. Do I want some combination of, I live on the West Coast still, I get good money, and I'm on a pretty good team? Then maybe you force your way to Golden State, and that's where this ends up at the end of the day. But it really is kind of funny that he's the guy that everyone's waiting on, because we were talking before the show the other day. This is a guy who nobody knew what he was going to do when he landed in OKC and then re-upped with them, and it came out that he was partying with Russell Westbrook on like July 4th. Russell Westbrook basically just convinced him, like, yeah, let's double down and we'll do it another year. And he re-upped. He signed a big deal with them, and 1 year later, Kawhi said, come to LA, and he said, bet. I'm there. So you really don't know what this guy's going to do.
Yeah. John Castiglione says, if PG opts in tomorrow, how quickly do you expect Morey to go to plan B? Is there a certain time tomorrow that PG has until?
I think it's 5 p.m. Most NBA deadlines are 5 p.m. except for the trade deadline, which is oddly 3 p.m. But most of them are 5 p.m. Eastern, but I'd have to double check. I'm not 100% sure.
Thank you for the super chat, John. Appreciate that.
To that point, if I were a betting man, I would say if he opts in.
So is that aggregatable or not?
No.
Okay.
If I were a betting man, I would say if PG opts in, relatively quickly, they'd move to whatever comes next.
My guess, and again, my guess is that I agree with Kyle. I specifically said that because nobody's going to aggregate like Derek Bodner agrees with Kyle. So there, they can aggregate you.
But look, because again, I believe KCP is in play, for example, and I believe that there are feelers out there on trade opportunities. We put it that way. I think if Paul George opts in, it's a signal that, because if you wanted to come to Philadelphia, the cleanest path is just you opt out, I sign the max, done deal. Once you opt in, you're saying, I want to leave other opportunities open, whether that's Golden State, whether that's Houston, whoever it could be, any team that he might want to go to. The Sixers as a franchise have to look at themselves and say, the risk of striking out entirely, not just on Paul George, but then the domino effect starts of, hey, KCP's got an offer in Orlando, Chicago, wherever it could be. we got to make moves. I don't think they're willing to walk away from the offseason just saying like, well, what the hell happened? And now we signed Batum and Oubre to massive deals to buy time until we can make them. I don't think they're in that sort of mindset. I think they want to have a very good team that can hopefully compete for a title. And they're not going to do that by waiting a week and a half on a Paul George that's opted into his deal.
All right, let's get to another super chat here from our friend Haidar with some Icelandic funds here. Look at that. All love here. Seems I missed some stuff yesterday. I'm planting my flag on trading for BI plus guys, Brandon Ingram plus guys, hoping he waives his trade kicker, which is 15%. I'll be there for the Porto pod.
Hey, look at that. We have an audience of 2 in Porto now. Michael and Haidar. Let's make it happen.
Sending over that Icelandic 1080. We appreciate it, man. And Brandon Ingram part. There was another piece of information from our friend Jake Fisher from Yahoo Sports. And Derek Jake said that it looks like, with not just speaking about Brandon Ingram, but also if they don't get Paul George, and mentioned just throwing some other names out there, but they might shift quickly to the Brandon Ingram part, just like Haidar is talking about.
Yeah, and look, that's something we've spoken quite a bit about. And by the way, Haidar, if we ever do go to Portugal and you show up, I am following you back to Iceland because that is real high on my bucket list.
I've heard it's beautiful.
I am taking an extended vacation, and you will not see me for at least 2 weeks. No, I mean we spoke a lot about Brandon Ingram. I think Paul George is a better fit than Ingram at this stage. I think he would be ahead of him in my priority, but I think Brandon Ingram as a backup plan to that is pretty good. I don't know if that's part of me coping or if that's part of an actual, like, I've gone in and dug a little deeper and I have a little more faith in the volume and his shot diet changing in a new situation. But I think he's certainly talented. And if you then combine that with having more money to go pursue a guy like KCP, there's an option, or there's an argument that some people will have that Ingram and KCP would be better than just Paul George and whatever you have left. I'd still probably err on the side of Paul George, but you do get some benefits with that extra cap space to go out with the second big move.
And I feel like I've said this already, but I'll say it again since we're so close to presumably decisions being made.
Yeah.
I don't think Brandon Ingram is Tobias Harris. I think he's better in some meaningful ways than Tobias. I think if you're concerned about the next Tobias Harris, it would be trading for Jeremy Grant. That's the guy who he profiles as he's pretty good, but I don't love that contract, and he doesn't do the things that they need him to do in order to meaningfully improve around Joel and Tyrese.
I think one of the things I've softened on since we first started talking about Ingram is I think one of my concerns was that I thought his next contract was going to be really bad. And I think enough of the league might have soured on him that I'm not convinced the next contract will be a disaster. Whether that ends up playing out, I don't know, but we'll see.
Here's what I would say. If the next contract is large, or as large as people maybe expected it to be previously, it means that this next season, he played well enough in the role for the Sixers or whoever to say, we'll give you whatever you want. We'll give you the top of the market. We'll give you the max. If it doesn't, then you say, okay, well, sunk cost on whatever picks we move to get him, but you don't have to commit your future to that guy.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so moving on, Haidar said plus guys. So I was looking at one here from, Sean Ford. Sean had said, basically put together his offseason. KCP, Jalen Smith, Michael Scotto was reporting that he did opt out of the player option, making him a free agent. We'll get back to him. Najee Marshall, potential trade. Could be sign and trade if someone wants Tobias Harris but can't sign him outright like Dallas, or other trades like Brandon Ingram. And then other stuff. So looking at we've already talked at length about KCP today. We talked about Najee Marshall over the past week and a half, of all three of us liking him. And Jalen Smith, what interest level would you have in him, Derek, as a front court player?
Yeah, 4 or 5 combo.
Yeah.
I think some of it comes down to, do you buy the shot? Because last year he shot the ball pretty well. And if so, then maybe you trust him playing alongside of Joel Embiid. He certainly has the capability to alter shots, and that's intriguing. I'm not sure I necessarily fully buy the defense. I think the impact is maybe a little less than the raw stock numbers would suggest. And I'm not 100% convinced on the shot, but I'd have to go back and look at it a little closer. Part of the problem is it's on he's playing 18, 20 minutes. It's on so low volume that the raw numbers probably just don't mean all that much. I don't think he's going to get like a huge deal. So if you're talking like but even still, I have to be convinced he can play alongside Embiid for significant minutes.
Go next.
And I'd have to go back and rewatch a little bit.
And at this point, given that, we'll see what happens with Paul Reed. They drafted Bona, and I still, again, I firmly believe they want to get a actual, like a big body type center to have 3 guys. Anybody else on the roster has to be able to play with Joel Embiid at the same time. You cannot roster 4 guys. Well, Joel Embiid, and then you cannot roster 3 more guys on top of that can't play with him under any circumstance. Like that's not a tenable roster situation to me. So a player is okay, and we'll see if anyone wants to bet on the shooting being real. But yeah, I'd put my eggs in a different basket.
That one still stings as a Suns fan at that time. Tyrese Halliburton was the one that some of us wanted. And they went with Jalen Smith, James Jones. Damn it. But hey, now he's going to be on his 3rd team leaving Indiana after that trade. And
that's always a bit of a red flag for a guy who's 23, 24?
Yep.
Yeah.
Bit of a red flag.
Because he is, he's athletic. He's versatile to your point, 4-5, and he can stretch out to the perimeter a little bit. But now deciding he's out of there, and they're like, all right, cool. We'll replace you and keep it moving. It's not great. It's not great, but it is enticing with the intangibles, the tools, the height and all that, the things that he brings to the table where, like, all right, if it is at a decent number, I wouldn't mind it. But the big question is, can he play next to Joel Embiid if they were to go in that direction? Also, wanted to talk about, we mentioned yesterday at the end of the show with the undrafted free agents, Justin Edwards, the Philadelphia native, 2-way contract with the Sixers. And then they also locked in David Jones as another player, as a 2-way guy. To join the teams. We'll hopefully see those players in Summer League. Like the 2 players, I know you like Justin Edwards, Kyle, speaking about him a little bit yesterday.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with him, quite frankly, because he's one of the few guys in the draft that I watched in high school, right? Like, he's a local kid, so he got a ton of buzz coming out.
Out of Emotep.
Yeah. So, is he the best, at least one of the best Philadelphia local players in quite a long time? He's got prototype tools, size, all that stuff, and he's shown flashes as an off-ball guy. I think he might shoot over the long term, which would be great, but he did not have a good season at Kentucky. And
when they recruit so much over you, not even over, they recruit so many guys, someone's going to get lost in all of those players. And he was one that seemingly got lost there.
And I think he started really slow there. And as these other guys, Reed Shepherd had an incredible season. Dillingham was awesome off the bench. And as those guys became a big part of what they were doing, Edwards, he's a big name and a big recruit there. He just, he falls down the pecking order a little bit. You have to figure out, what does he do? I think there were some issues with his burst was not quite good enough to consistently get to spots inside the arc and finish at the rim and things like that. And so he's a guy that didn't do the things he's good at or the things people think are projectable well enough. And that made the flaws even more glaring. Now, look, when you go to a program like Kentucky and you have a lot of expectations, you're a big-time recruit out of Philly, and you flounder to the degree he did, and then you fall out of the draft entirely and you have to be a 2-way type guy, there should be a chip on his shoulder, right? And so you would think you'll get the best out of him. Some kids are not built to come home and play at home. Like, there's a lot of pressure from, friends, family, hangers on, whatever, as a, 19, 20-year-old kid. So who knows how that'll go, but maybe coming home will be right for him. It'll bring him back to like this is where he had his confidence
To
and
who
his
he
swagger.
is,
And
yes.
like, this is where you built a name for yourself. And so it can be a positive for him after all that. And so obviously as a local kid, you root for him to figure it out. And he's got a lot to him if he can tie it all together. But, we'll see.
And Derek, out of Memphis, David Jones, his senior season averaged 21.8 points per game in 32 games played. He played 32 minutes, shot the ball 38% clip from beyond, 45.9. So let's just round that off to 46 for him. Also 7.6 boards, 1.8 assists there at Memphis. We talked about lefties.
Yeah.
The guy can score.
Setting up a lot of lefties.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think what I liked about him was he was a little bit more consistent, which you kind of expect, like different ages, obviously. Look, you're just looking for one player to stick. Take one player with upside, one player that's maybe proven a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yep.
But they both got size. They both got maybe the physical tools for it. Honestly, Daryl has done pretty well in terms of like undrafted and two-way guys.
Go get him, Rick.
Exactly. So I'm anxious to see what they got.
I mean, listen, if you get one real two-way guy a year, I think that's better than most of the league. So Ricky was great last year.
We'll see what happens with Turk.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, pretty good squad they're putting together for the Summer League to see what happens there. Before we go and get ready for our big draft, free agency show, on Sunday, 5 p.m., right here, PHLY Sixers podcast. The draftees, Jared McCain, Bona, introduced at the Sixers practice facility in Camden earlier today. We had a chance to be there, and some takeaways. I'll start with you, Kyle. I have my own. Derek, I have his own. But some takeaways from what you heard from the two newest Sixers.
I mean, like two real nice kids to start with. Seem like so both have gotten high marks for character, work ethic, playing hard. Like all those things are interconnected to me. But both seem to have a good understanding of who they are, not just as basketball players, but as people. There's been a lot of, in my eyes, kind of ridiculous discussion about who McCain is and what he does off the floor, but he seems very comfortable just like being himself and embracing the attention he gets both on and off the floor, and reiterated something he said the other day, which is, I played at Duke. I played at a high pressure place. So it might be more high pressure here just because it's a bigger city, right? But Duke's got a huge fan base, and every one of their games is on ESPN and national TV. And like, he does not shy away from the spotlight. And both these guys were adamant, like, I'm excited to come to somewhere where there are expectations. This is not a rebuilding type of team. This is not a team where if I screw up and I'm making mistakes, then it doesn't matter because nobody's there and nobody cares. Like, both of them seem to embrace the grind, embrace the pressure. I think, frankly, Bona will endear himself very quickly. If he gets minutes, I just think how hard that guy plays, and seems like a very nice, soft-spoken kid. I think people will take to him quickly.
Yeah.
Look. Are people super excited about this draft right now? No. Can those guys fit on this team and play important roles? I think so. And I think Bona, especially just like relative to expectations, I think a lot of the knocks on him are more worry about him as a starting type player. But in 10 minutes, when you're just saying to him,
go out there,
act like you've been shot out of a damn cannon,
yeah.
I think he's ready for that. He said, I love to run. I love to bang. I love to dunk on people. Like, that was the general sentiment of what he said. Sign me up for that type of guy coming off of the bench.
Yeah, and I think the key is he will play, with Paul. Paul had some skill sets to be effective, especially defensively. It was always trying to keep him playing within the confines of the system. I don't think you have any kind of that problem with Bona. And maybe that's where, like,
there will be some skill-related issues,
sure,
but yeah, he's not going to go off script.
But
maybe anything.
His limitations, not that his limitations are a good thing, but I think he knows who he is. And I think that will be key. And I agree with Kyle. I think both of these guys, if they play, I think fans are going to like them. They might not like, I think some of the reaction, which you saw on our show too, is just like, maybe the upside isn't there. Maybe the ability to play with Tyrese Maxey isn't there. But I think when you actually get to see them on a court, whether that's Summer League in a couple of weeks, whether that's in preseason or regular season, they're both going to play hard. And they're both going to bring skill sets that I do think that the team needs. So they might have questions, but when you get a chance to actually watch them play basketball, I think they are players who will endear themselves pretty quickly.
So the McCain part, when Kyle mentioned playing at Duke and being on national television and all, and he mentioned it himself this earlier today, where he said, when the lights get brighter, I basically thrive in that
I embrace
type of,
that moment.
Yeah, and you love to hear that. You love to hear that from a young player where he's not shying away from it whatsoever. And a lot of times the ball's simply in his hands. Now he has to get ready for a different role where the ball is not in his hands, but that ball may swing to him, like a game 6, DeAnthony Melton missing a couple of shots there, where those opportunities will present themselves to him. And he seems like he feels he's ready for that moment. They both seem very genuine. They were sharp. Yeah. They were poised as young players, comfortable in front of the question, the audience there, the media members answering those questions. And a lot of times when we sit there, forget about us just sitting there, you watching it on television. We've all seen plenty of press conferences where you're like, that guy's not into it. And look, there was no gameplay. They're at the highest high right now for being drafted into the NBA. But they gave very good, well thought out answers, and they seem like two really good guys. And if we're talking about the Sixers organization making a big deal in this draft process to get some good character people in here too, it seems like they did with these two young men that they just drafted, and McCain and Bona. On the floor, it's going to be fun to see. Summer League hasn't been what it has used to be, of course, during the whole rebuild where we saw all of that. But now we have two people that we're really interested in, McCain and Bona. You add there with the two undrafted free agents that we just talked about, Turk Smith maybe being back for that as well. Got some fun stuff to really pay attention to and to give people a lot of good things to talk about if you weren't really in on the draft picks and if they show out well enough to give you something to feel good about once the roster is set and complete, and those guys play well in both Utah and Las Vegas as well. So fun to hear them talk because they were really poised sitting there in front of everybody. And Bona's not even upperclassman, sophomore, but he also played in a big program in UCLA. He talked about learning from Jaime Jaquez and seeing what he had to deal with, talking to him about being in the NBA now. And I even thought, not just because I brought this name up, when we talk about playing next to Tyrese Maxey as a small guard and asked about what he does, I don't know if it was your question, but he spoke about how one of the Duke staffers, the coaches, when he asked questions about playing in a certain way, they gave him Fred VanVleet tape.
Yes.
To play like that.
One of his trainers was like, hey, this is a guy for you to study.
And we spoke about that simply because Maxey, him, Nick Nurse dealt with that with the Lowry VanVleet combination in the past. So it was good to hear that. He seems like he's really, really excited to be here. He's already on there in his uniform and doing his photo shoot, and then he's doing his thing. And we'll see what he does out there on the floor.
And I'll say one more thing we've talked a lot about McCain. So one last thing on Bona to reiterate what Derek was saying. They both got asked specifically, like, as you're coming in as a young guy, do you try to focus more on this is what I'm good at and really lock in on that? Or, hey, I need to improve on this. And obviously we've seen with Paul Reed over the years that he just kind of does whatever he feels like at a given moment from time to time. And part of getting him to rotation level was, hey, Paul, learn a bit of discretion and keep the highlight reel attempts to a minimum. Bona, when he got asked that, basically said, like, I'm coming here to play a role. Like, I'm going to do exactly what the coaches tell me to do. I don't have any illusions about, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And if you do that and you focus on what I'm good at, how I can help the team immediately, then the rest will come. And look, he's got really good perspective as a kid who grew up in Nigeria. He moves to Turkey at 13, right? Like as a kid, and goes there for a few years to pursue basketball, then moves to, I believe it was California. And so he's got some real, if you're talking about like a 20, 21-year-old kid, not everybody has that life experience, let alone career experience. So I would say I'm cautiously optimistic on him to help out in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
One more thing from new head coach from Arkansas, John Calipari, on his former recruit, Justin Edwards, says he signed with the Sixers on Twitter. He's saying this: I was disappointed he wasn't drafted because his upside is ridiculous. Philly is a great landing spot for him. Coach Nurse really likes him. Tyrese and I talked. He's going to take him under his wing. Don't be surprised as he busts through. All right.
It would be an awesome story if he does.
And he's home.
And Cal
so we'll
has
see.
never talked up a prospect who didn't deserve it.
So by the way, while we're on, I don't know if we've brought this up on the show. When Cal left Kentucky and then got hired by Arkansas, his hiring was, was that during the playoffs or right before whenever it was. We were in the Sixers locker room like the next day after it went official. And a bunch of us were talking to Tyrese Maxey. And I straight up asked him, this was away from the cameras. I was like, so Tyrese, what do we think about Calipari going to Arkansas? He goes, I'm an Arkansas fan. I went to Cal University. He was so quick to be like, I support Coach Cal. And part of the reason that he endears players in that way is because, look, Justin Edwards came there as a big-time recruit. He disappointed. And Cal is still very public. Like, that's still my guy. I believe in him and offering that type of – and look, that's for public consumption. All those guys will tell you privately he is saying the same things. He is a big booster of all his guys, and that's why he continues to get all kinds of big-time recruits, even when the program does not succeed at the level people want him to.
As he should be, but it's also part of our job to be like, well, but that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah. He's a good salesman.
Just
put it that way.
it. You know, we're talking about a local guy coming home to play for the Sixers on a two-way. Maybe he can bust through and make a name for himself. We've seen Ricky do well in the two-way. Turk was there for a while. Even Jeff Doughton with his two-way.
Well, I think Paul Reed was a two-way.
Yeah.
Shake Milton was a two-way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So these things happen. So we just wanted to share that about head coach John Calipari. All right. Well, I think we got everything. We fit everything into
we
this.
We do have two more super chats to go.
Rick Sachs, our guy Ricky, coming through with us on Wednesday, hanging out. He and his wife Veronica.
Yes.
Said, hey, that basketball signed by number 6, Julius Dr. J. Irving. Pretty cool, guys. You three rock. Rick, thank you. You rock. And I've been talking to Rick for years, and always a good dude. Always make sure, even when we were arena doing shows,
first chance
come by and say hello.
Yep.
Rick is always a good guy to talk to, so it's cool to hang out.
We would
with
have been happy for anybody who listens to the show, watches the show to win
it's
it.
even better though when the good people get
when
the
it's
giveaways.
one of our people whose name we say on the show often got to win it. That's a good feeling for us.
And Y2 says in the super chat, KJ McDaniel equals favorite random process prospect.
I'll say this about
who would yours? Well, say that, and then who would your favorite?
I would say this about KJ. That was peak. Showed people's process brain when everyone lost their minds when he signed with, what was it, Houston? I think he went to
2 years, $3 million per, I think.
And people, how do you let him get away? And it's like he was never really heard from again.
They traded him, right? They traded him, and then
he re-signed, right?
Just like there's just a lot of consternation about a guy who was not.
Right, so
he was exciting, but
before that, we were talking about like Elliot Williams. So like he was a step up.
Elliot Williams, I forgot. Elliot Williams,
favorite
Memphis?
random prospect.
He was like honestly, Elliot was one of them because it's like you looked at him like, oh, he looks like a basketball player, lefty, good size, and then you saw him shoot. It's like,
love a lefty. Always say it.
Favorite during the rebuild.
I will say maybe my favorite prospect. This isn't random because he was a first round pick, but like I loved Timothé before I watched him play over here, and then it ended quickly.
It
but
all
like
fell
when he
apart.
was at Mega. Great.
He was the guy
he
that prompted me to say, I'm not scouting these overseas guys. Like I was like, man, this guy looks like he could play. And then he comes over here and it's like, man, this guy can't play.
My favorite didn't really last long, but Casper Ware was my favorite because I just like the small guard that can just flat out score.
He had a great name too.
He could.
He ended
score.
up in what, Australia?
Yeah.
Didn't he play when they came back? And I think he played against the Sixers, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that guy could score, man. Who's your favorite?
I mean, I loved watching Tony Roten.
He drove me insane.
He's my
right there with
Devon's favorite.
But that's so.
Get your hands ready in the 10th row, man.
A different sort of
It's happening.
prospect. But he is part of why guys like Ron Hollins who are like, oh, every once in a while you just see this, holy shit, look what he did. But there's just like the guy can't shoot And I don't.
That
That's why I
confidence.
started to back away from the guards and wings. No, I cheated on that with Collier this year, so maybe he ends up as a Tony Roten type guy. But
I'll never forget John Hollinger, my future colleague at The Athletic, at the time was still working for the Grizzlies, and I'd never met him before. I'd been tweeting about how much Tony Roten was driving me insane. John Hollinger comes walking up to me at Sloan in the concourse at Sloan, just says, "How do you like Tony Roten now?" Starts cackling and walks away. He didn't even introduce himself. He didn't. I had never met him before. He just, "How do you like Tony Roten?" cackles and walks away. It was one of the weirdest introductions to a media member I've ever had.
Funny story for me, when the trade happened, when they acquired him, reached out to someone in Memphis. They came on the show. Before we got him on the air, he said, "Get ready," because this guy thought he should have been starting over Mike Conley.
Oh my God, yes.
So get ready for what's about to happen. I reached out later on. I was like, yo, you were right. Because I liked him in high school, coming out of high school. He was good at Washington.
Yeah.
I liked the idea of it. And going to Memphis as a young player to learn there, it's like, oh, this is a good spot for him.
yeah,
And then it just happened. It happened before it got here. He got here, though, because he was like, yeah, get ready. I'm better than Mike Conley. Get this guy on the bench. I should be starting. That's where he was.
we got a shout out from CJ Jones in the chat. Pierre Jackson,
Yes,
Summer League
yes,
MVP.
Pappy
Jack.
Pappy Jack, who
Yes.
used to every single post would be hashtag they sleep.
And
He was a
had-
character and he was fun to watch.
and he
Shame-
had
shame
the
about the
dope
injury,
sneakers,
too.
Yeah.
That was
Martian
an
Lynch said he has-
Achilles, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Because it was definitely an Achilles. Because I remember it was like
Took him out for a long time.
it took him out for a while, and it was one of those where he didn't quite realize what happened at first. I think where it was just like
Yeah.
and now in part because of that specific injury, when I see guys injure their Achilles now, I'm like, know that look right away.
I thought I was kicked in my leg, and I just dropped to the floor. That's how it happened. And all I did was push off. That's all I did was push off. So,
It's a brutal one.
yeah, so that's a tough one. Klay Thompson, he dealt with it.
Eugene Ross, remember Furkan Aldemir.
Aldemir, number 19. For
There was some I won't say real
Did
excitement
he sign a
for
real
him,
contract?
Oh,
too?
yeah.
but he came out and he was immediately like, "Oh God, that guy cannot hang."
Well, I remember talking to people, I'm like, what's his best attribute? They're like, well, he sets good screens. I'm like, no, there's got to be something better
And
than
he's
that to be
a
an NBA player.
rebounder,
He was,
but
offensively especially. But
Yeah.
when you're your scouting report is grabs offensive rebounds and sets screens, it's like, oh no, what are we doing?
No, that was
Part of the.
he took the floor and I was like, "Oh, he's out of here."
Well, he was like
Goodbye.
6'6", like that.
A lot of names popping up.
If you're
going to
be a Charles Barkley at power forward, you better have Charles Barkley's athleticism.
This is definitely going to be an August or September show. We're going to bookmark this one.
This is some fun names that I'm seeing in here. But hey, we need to get out of here because we will be back
Martian
with
bringing
you.
up Sergio Rodriguez. He was 29. He wasn't a prospect.
Wasn't he EuroLeague MVP
Yeah.
at one point too?
Yeah, he was real good.
Or at least I don't remember if he was MVP. Maybe he was MVP. I feel like he was.
Yeah.
He's the example I always give to people of Joel Embiid can make a lineup with anybody in it positive because he came and there were some not big expectations, but reasonable expectations.
Brian liked him.
The Colangeli were in
It
on
sounded
him.
like you said colangeli, like lying, which
I
would
was
have
trying to
fit
say
too.
the
But
plural
I got you.
colangelos.
I got you.
They were pretty high on him, and then
Yeah.
watched him play, and I was like, Joel, good luck, buddy.
Whew, like she's fed in
Good
there.
effing luck.
All right.
Shout out to Jakar Sampson. by the way.
Jakar
A lot of
Sampson.
Jakar. Point Jakar was
That
a
was
real
one of the
moment.
wild
That
ones.
was
When they said he was going to be the point guard and it was more than one game, I was like, oh, we are really in a full rebuild here, boy, because goodness, man. All right, it's time for a roll call on a Friday. This was a fun one. We have our show, 5 o'clock, folks. Book it, 5 o'clock on a Sunday. We know it's Sunday. We know it's going to be nice, but we hope that you can hang in there
you
with
got the
us.
Sunday scaries on Sunday. Come and hang out with us.
Hang out with us, and you're sitting on the back deck. Turn us on, put us on, and let's get ready. Free agency, you always do it. You might as well watch it with us now and talk about it with us. 5 o'clock right here, PHLY Sixers Podcast. Time for a roll call.
And I promise we won't do 2 hours of remember some guys from the process.
Maybe
We
an
won't-
hour though, because there's
Yeah, we'll see.
time to kill beforehand.
Thank you to all our people. Thank you to Jonathan Chen, Randy Rubart,
What up, Randy?
YTube, the dude. with the big Lebowski
Yes.
avatar.
Yes.
Fresh Prince 215. Smy Guy.
What up, Smy Guy?
Martian Lynch 33.
Lynch.
Jamie's
Aaron.
cousin.
What up, Aaron?
SJA Sixers. Eugene Ross.
What
It
up,
was great
Gene?
meeting you the other night, by the way. Eugene.
We ain't seen
missed
Aaron
him.
in a while, too.
I
missed
tried to
him.
bring you over.
No, but
and
like
you
then I
were
had to get
locked
set
in.
up and-
You were locked in. I Gavini. Citizen X. Haidar over there in
Haidar.
Iceland,
What
who's
up?
coming to Porto to hang out with us
Thanks
and
for the
Michael.
super chat.
T. Harris. I hope it's not that. T. Harris. I don't know, though. I'm raising an eyebrow. My girl, Winona.
What up,
in
Nona?
the building. Lost Sleep TV. Spencer Cotman. Brian Pumper. 215. J. Philly.
What up, Pump?
J. Love. Kane.
Kane.
B1. Remo K. Who else we got in here today? Did I say 215 J Philly? If I did, I'm saying it again.
There
How
you
about
go.
that? MSKF. And those are spaced out. So that's, read into that what you will. Citizen X. X-Man. We got back-to-back X's.
We have 3 X's overall. What up,
CJ
X?
Jones. In the
CJ.
building. The
What's
number
happening, CJ?
one Pierre Jackson fan in all of PHLY. Provolone John. Mr. Sandman.
What up, Provolone?
Got a full house today.
Yeah, we do.
everybody.
Mr. Sandman.
Who are our
Bring back
super
Isaiah Cannon.
Who are our super chatters today? We had the
a bunch of
Merce and Me or tiramisu.
Tiramisu.
If you're talking to Devon, thank you for the kind words from you to open the show. We got Corey. We got MDM. Davon, a.k.a. Schoolboy Beats. Matt C. Is that Corrado?
We'll
Sorry,
go with
my
that.
vision's-
What up, Matt?
Michael B. The Prince of Porto.
What up, Mike?
Rick Sachs.
Sachs.
John C. The other two I already got to. Sean Ford, JR100. Rubber Band Man. Shout out to T.I.
T.I. Look at that.
King of the South.
Yes.
Self-proclaimed, but I don't know.
Self-proclaimed.
Who's got the... I don't. That's another show.
And a great vocabulary.
Was there
Great
no
vocabulary.
no darkness today?
I didn't see darkness. We got
That's all I
Ja,
was trying to
Ja, Ja. Al, the 2-minute
Ja,
warning
Ja,
in the
Ja.
building.
What up, Al?
Marcus Blackstock. All right.
Speaking of Ja, Ja,
Thaz-
Ja, somebody did say vegan Ja was the best. Ja.
Oh, God.
No
vegan
version
Ja.
of Ja was
No,
the best.
thank you. And finally, the truth in the building. Guys, if you
Paul
have not already,
Pierce.
hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. If you hit the thumbs up button, it'll
That was
make
kinda
me
shitty.
feel. Oh, and Valhos.
Val!
Valhos in the chat, in the building.
Do we hit the bell every time the Sixers
If you
sign
hit the
somebody
thumbs up
on
button, we will
Sunday?
be back on Sunday at
Every-
5
We can do that.
o'clock
We
for
can do
your
that.
pre
Yeah.
and post
Breaking
free
news.
agency
Yeah. Right?
Hit it a couple times,
extravaganza. All right. You guys are really overdoing it on the bell. Goodbye.
Thank you, Bree.
Thank you to super producer Bree. We'll be back Sunday. See you at 5 o'clock for another long
And
show.
Rich will be here with us.
Rich will be here. Derek's voice will not be.
No, it's
Mine
gone.
probably
a
won't
lot
be.
of tea that day. We're going to have some tea.
Tea and orange juice. How about that?
Pinky up.
Maybe some Holly Pop.
Pinky up.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Fancy now.
We all silly like the mayor.